The winter winds had begun to blow across the small town of Nur Rabad, whispering through narrow streets and rattling the tin roofs of humble homes. Snow dusted the cobblestones, and the faint glow of oil lamps shimmered through the misty evenings. In one of those modest houses, nestled between a bakery and a cobbler's shop, lived a young couple, Amir and Layla. They were not rich, but their home was filled with warmth that no money could buy. Amir, with his calloused hands and gentle smile, worked at a small repair shop near the market square. He spent his days fixing broken clocks, radios, and watches, tiny machines that seemed to hold the heartbeats of other people's lives. Though his work was hard and his pay was meager, Amir took pride in every screw he turned and every ticking watch he revived. Layla, on the other hand, was known in their street for her delicate sewing. Her fingers moved like the wind, stitching torn garments into life again. She sat by the window each morning with a needle in hand and sunlight falling across her face. Her eyes were bright and full of quiet strength, even when her heart carried worries about the unpaid rent or the thin pantry shelves. Despite the hardships, their home was a sanctuary of laughter and love. They shared their morning tea beside a small stove, teasing each other over burnt bread or mismatched socks. They had learned to stretch a single coin until it sparkled, cooking simple meals, mending old clothes, and finding joy in the smallest of moments. Their first wedding anniversary was only a week away, and though they spoke little about it, both Amir and Layla secretly dreamed of celebrating it in a special way. Not with a feast or fancy gifts, they knew they could not afford that, but with something meaningful. Each wanted to give the other a present that showed how deeply they cared. One chilly evening, after a long day at the workshop, Amir sat on the edge of their small wooden bed, watching Layla brush her long silken hair. The lamplight danced through the strands, catching the copper tones that shimmered with every movement. Her hair was her pride and his favorite sight in the world. Sometimes he would joke that her hair could make even the moon jealous. She'd laugh and call him a poet, but he always meant it. That night, when she went to hang their laundry by the stove, Amir glanced at her reflection in the mirror and whispered to himself, "If only I could buy her that silver comb set she loved." He remembered how, a month ago, they had passed by a jewelry shop window. Layla had stopped, just for a moment, her eyes lighting up at the sight of a pair of finely crafted combs with delicate flower engravings. She hadn't asked for them, she never asked for anything, but Amir had noticed. He sighed deeply, knowing he could never afford such a gift. His earnings barely covered their living expenses. Still, the thought of seeing Layla's joy filled his heart with determination. At the same time, Layla had her own secret wish. She had noticed that Amir's wristwatch, a precious keepsake from his late father, had a broken strap. He still wore it every day, though the leather was torn and the face cracked. Layla knew how much that watch meant to him, and she longed to buy him a new strap, one that would last for years. She had seen a fine leather strap in the market, but the price had made her heart sink. As she lay beside Amir that night, listening to the wind tapping at their window, Layla thought of ways she could save enough to buy it. Maybe if I finish a few extra dresses this week, she whispered to herself. Maybe if I skip lunch for a few days. Amir, meanwhile, was lost in similar thoughts beside her, planning how he could work extra hours at the shop to afford her gift. They both fell asleep that night with dreams, not of what they would receive, but of what they could give. In their hearts, love and sacrifice were already weaving a story far more beautiful than they could ever imagine. Outside, the snow continued to fall softly on the rooftops, wrapping their little home in white silence. Inside, the dim light of their lamp glowed like a promise that no matter how poor they were in money, they would always be rich in love. The next morning, sunlight spilled softly through the window, glinting off the frost that clung to the glass. Layla woke early, as she always did, to prepare tea before Amir left for work. She moved quietly around their tiny kitchen, her bare feet brushing against the cold floor. The kettle hissed, and the sweet aroma of cardamom filled the air. Amir came out of their small bedroom, still buttoning his shirt. "You're up early again," he said with a yawn. Layla smiled. "So are you. Maybe we both couldn't sleep because someone kept talking in his dreams again." Amir laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Did I? Maybe I was telling you how much I love you, even in my sleep." Layla giggled, handing him his cup of tea. "Then dream louder next time, so I can hear it." They both laughed, the sound brightening their simple home. Moments like these were what kept their spirits strong, little fragments of happiness, stitched between long hours of work and worry. After breakfast, Amir put on his worn coat and kissed Layla on the forehead before leaving for the repair shop. As soon as the door closed behind him, Layla turned to her sewing table, her mind already racing with plans. The anniversary was only 5 days away. She pulled out a small tin box from beneath the table, her secret savings. Inside lay a few coins she had been collecting for months, each one earned through hours of mending torn clothes for neighbors. She counted them carefully. Not enough. The leather strap for Amir's watch cost at least twice what she had. She sighed, her heart sinking a little. "If only I had more time," she murmured, but then she shook her head and smiled faintly. "No, I'll find a way." Layla spent the entire morning sewing, her needle flashing in the sunlight like a spark of determination. Every stitch was a promise, a thread of love she hoped would take shape as Amir's perfect gift. Meanwhile, across town, Amir was hunched over his workbench in the repair shop. The place smelled of oil and old metal. Around him were clocks in various states of disrepair, some ticking faintly, others silent as if holding their breath. His boss, an old man named Mr. Rafiq, noticed how distracted Amir seemed that day. "Your mind's not in these clocks, boy," the old man said gruffly, peering over his glasses. "Something wrong at home?" Amir shook his head quickly. "No sir, just thinking." Mr. Rafiq chuckled. "Ah, thinking. That's what all young husbands do before their anniversaries. Let me guess, you're trying to buy her something special?" Amir smiled sheepishly. "You could say that." The old man's eyes softened. "A wise man once told me, son, the best gifts don't always come from gold or silver. Sometimes, they come from the heart and a bit of cleverness." Amir nodded, though he still couldn't shake the image of the silver comb set gleaming behind the shop window near the market. He remembered how Layla's eyes had sparkled when she saw it. He wanted that sparkle again. He wanted her to feel beautiful, not because of the combs, but because she was worth every dream he had. During his lunch break, Amir walked to the market, his breath visible in the cold air. He stopped in front of the jewelry shop, staring at the combs displayed behind the glass. The shopkeeper, recognizing him, smiled, still admiring them. He asked kindly. Amir chuckled. "Just wishing. Actually, they're good quality," said the shopkeeper. "Real silver. A fine gift for a fine lady." Amir ran a hand through his hair, thinking hard. He had some savings, but not enough. Even if he worked overtime for a week, it wouldn't cover the cost. Still, he couldn't bear to give Layla something ordinary. That evening, as he walked home under the pale moonlight, Amir made a silent vow. "I'll find a way. She deserves something beautiful." Back home, Layla was finishing a new dress order when she heard his footsteps outside. She quickly hid the tin box and smiled as he entered. "You're late," she said softly. "Busy day," he replied, setting down his tools. "A clock refused to tick until I bribed it with patience." She laughed, shaking her head. They ate their simple meal of lentils and bread in comfortable silence. Each of them, lost in thought, kept stealing glances at the other, wondering what the other might be planning. Before sleeping, Layla whispered into the darkness, "I just want to make him happy." And in that same moment, Amir turned on his side, looking at her peaceful face, and thought the very same thing. Outside, the moon shone over Nurabad like a silver coin. The streets of Nurabad were wrapped in mist, dreaming of giving. The wind against window panes filled the nights like a song of longing. Inside their tiny home, Layla worked tirelessly, stitching clothes by the soft light of a flickering oil lamp. Her fingers were pricked with needle marks, her eyes weary, yet her heart stayed warm with one thought: Amir's anniversary gift. But despite her effort, the little tin box of savings still held only a few coins. She counted them again that morning, her lips moving silently as she did. "Not enough," she whispered. The leather strap she had seen in the market cost nearly triple what she had saved. Her heart ached with frustration. She wanted so badly to surprise Amir, to show her gratitude for all the love and kindness he gave her, even when life offered them so little in return. She sat still for a moment, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror on the wall. Her long, beautiful hair, thick, shining, and chestnut brown, fell past her shoulders like a silk river dot. An idea slowly formed in her mind, wild, painful, but undeniable. She remembered passing a small shop near the tailor's market a few weeks ago. A sign had hung above the doorway: "We buy human hair, wigs, and extensions made here." Layla swallowed hard. Could she do it? Could she really sell her hair? Her fingers brushed through her locks, feeling their softness one last time. That hair had always been her pride, Amir's favorite thing about her. He often said it looked like the night sky when the lamp glowed behind it. And yet, at that moment, she realized that Amir's happiness meant far more than her vanity. A soft tear rolled down her cheek, but she smiled through it. "If this is what it takes to buy his gift, then it's worth it," she whispered. That afternoon, wrapping her hair in a scarf, Layla walked briskly through the narrow streets. Snow crunched beneath her boots, and the air bit at her skin. When she reached the little wig maker's shop, she hesitated at the door. The shopkeeper, a kind old woman with silver glasses, looked up from her work. "Yes, dear." Layla's voice trembled. I came to sell my hair." The woman stood, walking closer to inspect it. "It's beautiful, thick and healthy. I'll give you a fair price." As the woman carefully cut Layla's long locks, the sound of the scissors echoed in Layla's ears. Each snip felt like a memory being released. Every brush, every compliment, every moment Amir had admired her beauty. But beneath the sadness, there was pride. Pride in giving up something she loved for someone she loved even more. When it was done, Layla's head felt lighter, and her heart strangely stronger. The woman handed her a small pouch of coins, more than she had hoped for. "You did a brave thing," the shopkeeper said gently, "but love always finds its way back to beauty." Layla thanked her, tucking the money safely into her coat pocket before heading straight to the market. Her heart raced as she walked into the watch shop. The same strap she had seen days ago, fine brown leather with neat stitching, hung behind the counter. "How much for this one?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The shopkeeper smiled. 50 rupees. Layla handed over the pouch of coins with trembling hands. When the man placed the leather strap in a small paper box and tied it with string, she held it as though it were treasure. To her, it was that night. When Amir came home, Layla greeted him with her scarf still covering her short hair. He didn't notice anything unusual. He was too tired, too preoccupied with his own secret plan. They ate dinner quietly, each hiding their own sacrifice behind gentle smiles. As Amir fell asleep beside her, Layla turned to look at him in the dim light. His breathing was slow and peaceful. She reached out and brushed his cheeks softly, whispering, "You'll see, my love, you'll see that I found a way." She smiled, though her heart trembled. Tomorrow, she would wrap his gift and place it beneath the small lamp, a surprise from her soul to his. Outside, the snow kept falling silent and soft, as if the heavens themselves were blessing her act of love. The next morning dawned gray and cold. The wind slipped through every crack in the little house, making the curtains dance and the lamp flicker. Amir woke early, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Layla was still asleep beside him, her head wrapped in a scarf as usual. He smiled softly, unaware of the secret hidden beneath it. Today, he told himself, he would find a way to buy her the silver combs she had admired. His heart beat faster at the thought. He could still remember the way she had paused before that shop window weeks ago, her reflection mingling with the glittering display. It had been just a passing glance, but Amir had memorized it. The way her eyes had lit up, the soft smile on her lips, that image stayed with him. After breakfast, he kissed her cheek, picked up his coat, and walked out into the bitter wind. Snow fell lightly over the streets of Nurabad, blanketing the town in quiet white. The repair shop was colder than usual, and his breath fogged the air as he entered. He set to work immediately, mending a clock with trembling hands. But his mind wasn't on gears or springs. It was on Layla, on her laughter, her gentleness, and her quiet courage. He wanted to give her something that showed she was worth the world to him. Still, when he counted the few rupees in his pocket, his heart sank. Even if he skipped meals for a week, even if he worked late into the night, it wouldn't be enough to buy those combs. All morning he struggled to focus, until his employer, Mr. Rafiq, noticed his distraction again. "Amir," he said gruffly, "you've tightened that screw 3 times already. What's on your mind, boy?" Amir smiled sheepishly. "Sorry, sir, I was thinking about my wife." "Ah," said Mr. Rafiq knowingly, setting down his magnifying glass. "Anniversary coming up, isn't it?" Amir nodded. The old man chuckled. "You know, I once sold my best tools to buy my wife a gold bracelet. She never wore it much, but she cried when I gave it to her. Not for the bracelet, but because she knew what it had cost me." Amir listened quietly, a thought forming in his mind. Maybe I could sell something too. That evening, after the shop closed, Amir sat alone at his workbench. The sound of the ticking clocks around him filled the room like 100 quiet heartbeats. He looked down at his wrist at the old, cracked watch that had once belonged to his father. It was more than just an object to him. It was the last memory of his father, the man who had taught him patience, honesty, and love. Every time the hands ticked, Amir felt his father's lessons, still guiding him. He hesitated, his chest tightening. Could he really sell it? He ran his thumb across the glass face, cracked, but still ticking faithfully. The shop's lamps glowed dimly, and in their light, Amir made his decision. "It's only a thing," he whispered to himself, "but Layla's happiness, that's everything." The next day, during his lunch break, Amir visited the old pawn shop near the market. The shopkeeper, a thin man with spectacles perched on his nose, looked up as Amir entered. "What brings you in, friend?" he asked. Amir took off the watch and placed it gently on the counter. "I want to sell this." The man examined it carefully. "It's an old model, a bit worn, but still working. Sentimental piece." Amir smiled sadly. "Very, but I need the money more." The shopkeeper nodded, counted out some notes, and handed them to him. "A fair deal," he said. "You've got a kind heart, I can tell. Spend it on something that matters." Amir thanked him and stepped out into the cold air, clutching the money tightly. His heart ached with loss, but also swelled with anticipation. He went straight to the jewelry shop. The silver comb set still gleamed behind the glass, just as it had before, shining like moonlight. "This one," Amir said firmly, pointing to it. The shopkeeper smiled. "A fine choice. A gift for someone special." "The most special," Amir replied softly. When he returned home that evening, his hands trembled as he placed the small wrapped box inside his coat. Layla greeted him at the door with her usual warmth. He didn't notice the shorter strands of hair hidden beneath her scarf. "How was your day?" she asked. "Long," he said, smiling faintly. "But worth it." They ate dinner together, neither speaking of their secret plans. There was something in the air, an unspoken excitement, a shared heartbeat between them. As they went to bed, Amir lay awake beside her, listening to the faint tick of the clocks in his memory. His wrist felt bare now, without his father's watch, but his heart felt full because soon, he would see joy on Layla's face. He smiled in the darkness, whispering to himself, "She shined brighter than silver." Outside, The snow fell again, steady and peaceful. Inside, two hearts beat with love.
The day of their anniversary
arrived with a quiet
already
made them richer than any treasure in the world. The rooftops of Nur. The town seemed to be sleeping under a white blanket, and even the usual noise of carts and vendors had faded. Inside their small home, Layla was busy preparing what she hoped would be a perfect evening. She wanted the night to feel special, even without fancy decorations or expensive gifts. From morning till noon, she worked with tender care, sweeping the floor, dusting the old shelves, and arranging the few flowers she'd managed to find at the market. The petals were pale and fragile, but in her eyes, they were beautiful. When everything was ready, she cooked Amir's favorite meal, lentil stew with a bit of spiced rice, simple but made with love. The delicious aroma filled the little house. She placed the food carefully on their small wooden table, then lit 2 candles, one on each side. Their soft glow flickered across the walls, casting shadows that danced like memories. Before Amir returned home, Layla went to her mirror. Her reflection startled her for a moment. The short hair beneath her scarf looked strange, unfamiliar. She touched the uneven strands with trembling fingers. For a moment, she wondered if Amir would be disappointed. What if he doesn't like it? She whispered to herself. What if he thinks I've lost my beauty? But then she smiled faintly and lifted her chin. No, he'll understand. He always does. She tied the scarf neatly around her head and reached for the small paper box containing Amir's gift, the leather strap she had bought with her sacrifice. She had wrapped it carefully in brown paper and tied it with a thin blue ribbon she'd saved from their wedding bouquet. As the clock struck 7, she heard footsteps outside, steady, familiar, beloved. Her heart leaped. She quickly set the gift beside the lamp and straightened her dress. The door creaked open, and Amir stepped inside, brushing snow from his coat. His face was red from the cold, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. Layla, he said softly, smiling. You've made it look like a palace in here. She laughed. A very small palace. Amir hung up his coat and looked around at the candles, the flowers, and the table set for 2. It's perfect, he whispered. Just like you. They sat down to eat. The food was warm and comforting, and laughter filled the room once again. For a while, neither spoke of gifts or secrets. They just talked about their day, their memories, their dreams. But underneath every word, anticipation simmered quietly, waiting for the right moment. When dinner ended, Layla stood and smiled shyly. Wait here, she said. She walked to the small table by the lamp, picked up the wrapped box, and handed it to him. Happy anniversary, my love. Amir looked at her in surprise. You bought me something. Of course, she said, trying to hide her excitement. Open it. He unwrapped the paper carefully and lifted the lid. Inside was a gleaming brown leather watch strap, smooth, strong, and beautifully crafted. His breath caught in his throat. Layla, he whispered. It's perfect. But how did you afford this? She smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. Let's just say I found a way. Amir stared at her, overwhelmed. He wanted to ask more, but she quickly gestured toward a small box resting beside the lamp. Your turn, she said gently. I have something for you too. He blinked, realizing what she meant. With trembling hands, he picked up the little box wrapped in soft paper and handed it to her. Happy anniversary, Layla. She opened it slowly, her fingers shaking slightly. Inside lay a set of silver combs, delicately engraved with tiny flowers, the same ones she had once admired in the shop window. For a moment, she just stared, speechless. The combs shimmered in the candlelight like captured moonbeams. But then her hand went to her head, to the scarf hiding what was no longer there. Her heart skipped a beat. Amir, she whispered. My hair. He looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Layla swallowed, then slowly untied the scarf. Her short hair fell around her face in uneven locks. I sold it, she said softly, tears glistening in her eyes. To buy your gift. The room fell silent. Amir's eyes widened as realization dawned. He reached instinctively for his wrist, empty now. Bare, where his father's watch once sat. I sold my watch, he said hoarsely. To buy your combs. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The candles flickered, and the snow outside whispered against the windows. Then, slowly, a small trembling laugh escaped from Layla's lips. Amir smiled back through his tears. And soon, they were both laughing, not from humor, but from the tender ache of love. Their gifts, useless yet priceless, lay shining on the table, symbols of sacrifice, devotion, and understanding. That night, as they held each other close, they realized something deeper than words. They had given away what they loved most to give love itself, and that, they knew, was the truest gift of all. The little house in Nurabad was silent except for the soft ticking of the wall clock, a sound that filled the room like the heartbeat of love itself. The candles had burned low, their flames flickering weakly, casting long shadows across the walls. Amir and Layla sat facing each other at the small table, their gifts lying between them, the silver combs gleaming faintly, and the leather watch strap resting beside them. Neither of them spoke for a long while. The weight of what they had both done settled quietly in the air. Layla's eyes shimmered as she looked at Amir. You sold your watch, she said finally, her voice soft but trembling. Amir smiled gently, though his throat ached. and you sold your hair." They both let out a quiet laugh, the kind that comes when tears are too close to falling. Amir reached out, brushing his fingers over the silver combs. "They were meant for your beautiful hair," he said. "Now they'll have to wait until it grows again." Layla smiled back through her tears. "And your watch strap?" She glanced at his empty wrist. "We'll have to wait until you get another watch." Their laughter mingled with sadness, and yet it felt strangely beautiful, like music born of heartbreak and love entwined together. Amir stood and came around to where Layla sat. He gently lifted one of the silver combs from the box and placed it in her hand. "Even if you can't use them now," he said softly, "they're still yours. You deserve them." She looked up at him, her eyes glistening. "And you deserve your watch," she whispered. "I know how much it meant to you." He shook his head with a small smile. "It's just a thing, Layla. You're my time. Every second I live is for you." Layla's heart swelled. She reached out, taking his hand. "And you're my gift," she said, "more precious than anything I could ever buy." They stood there for a moment, holding each other's gaze. The candles flickered again, as if bowing to the depth of their love. Amir gently pulled her into his arms. Her head rested against his chest, and though her hair was short and uneven, he thought she had never looked more beautiful. "Do you know what this means?" he murmured into her ear. She smiled faintly. "That we both made foolish sacrifices." He chuckled softly. "Maybe, but I think it means that love makes even foolishness holy." They stood there a while longer, wrapped in warmth that no cold winter wind could touch. Later, as they sat by the window, watching snowflakes drift under the street lamps, Layla spoke again. "When I was selling my hair, I thought of you. I kept thinking, he's going to be so happy with his gift. It made it easier." Amir turned to her, his eyes full of tenderness. "And when I handed over my father's watch, I thought the same. I imagined you smiling, holding the combs in your hands. I didn't even feel the loss then." Layla nodded slowly. "It's strange, isn't it? We both gave up what meant the most to us, and somehow, we gained something even greater." Amir smiled. "Yes, we learned the truth that love's value isn't measured in gold or silver, but in what we're willing to give up for each other." A quiet peace settled over them. The sadness of the moment began to fade, replaced by something deeper, an understanding that bound their hearts even closer. Layla picked up one of the silver combs again, and ran her thumb along its delicate engraving. "You know," she said softly, "when my hair grows back, these will remind me not of what I lost, but of how much you love me. And this," Amir said, lifting the leather strap and curling it gently in his hand, "will remind me of your courage and how far you'd go just to make me smile." They exchanged shy smiles, glowing with the warmth of shared sacrifice. As the night deepened, Amir placed the combs and the strap carefully inside a small wooden box. He set it on the shelf above their bed. "Someday," he said quietly, "we'll have more, maybe a better home, nicer things. But even then, I'll still keep these. They'll remind me of who we were, and what love really means." Layla leaned her head on his shoulder, closing her eyes. "Then let's never forget tonight," she whispered. "The night we learned that the value of a gift is not in its price." Amir kissed her forehead gently. "No, my love," he murmured. "It's in the heart that gives it." The last candle flickered out, leaving only the glow of snowlight filtering through the window. In that pale silver glow, two hearts beat as one, content, grateful, and rich beyond measure. Morning sunlight filtered gently through the thin curtains of Amir and Layla's modest home, painting golden stripes across the floor. The night's silence had given way to the soft hum of life outside, footsteps on cobblestones, vendors calling out their morning wares, and the distant sound of a rooster greeting the dawn. But inside their small house, the world still felt still and sacred. Amir stirred awake first. He lay for a moment, watching Layla sleep beside him. Her cropped hair caught the sunlight, glinting like strands of bronze. He reached out, brushing a loose strand from her forehead, smiling softly. To him, she looked even more radiant, not because of how she appeared, but because of the love shining from within her. He thought of the night before, the laughter through tears, the exchanged gifts now resting quietly on the shelf. The pain of losing his father's watch still lingered, but it was no longer heavy. It had transformed into something lighter, a reminder of how deeply he was loved. Layla woke soon after, stretching and smiling as her eyes met his. "Good morning," she whispered. "Good morning," Amir replied, his voice gentle. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded, her smile faint but warm. "Yes, my dreams were full of laughter." "And your voice?" He chuckled softly. "That's a good sign." For a moment, neither spoke. They simply looked at each other, both remembering all that had passed. Their sacrifices, their fears, their joy. There was a quiet understanding between them that words could no longer improve. After breakfast, just bread and tea, Layla opened the small box that held their gifts. She lifted the silver combs, and Amir noticed how she touched them differently now. No longer with longing, but with gratitude. She turned one over in her palm and said, "You know, Amir, last night I realized something. These combs, they're not just pretty things anymore. They're proof that love is never measured in what we own, but in what we're willing to give away." Amir nodded thoughtfully. "And I think I finally understand what my father used to say," he murmured. He once told me, a man's wealth isn't in his pocket, but in his heart. Layla smiled, eyes shining. Then we must be very rich indeed. He laughed quietly. The richest people in Nur Abad, they both knew it wasn't about the things they had, but about what they shared, the laughter in their small kitchen, the warmth in their hearts even when the world outside was cold. Their love had turned poverty into abundance, and loss into meaning. Later that day, as Amir prepared to leave for work, Layla walked him to the door. Before he stepped out, she said softly, "Promise me something." He turned, curious. "What is it?" "No matter how hard things get, let's never stop giving to each other. Not just gifts, but kindness, patience, and love. Those are the real treasures." Amir smiled and touched her cheek. "I promise." And from that day on, that promise became the heartbeat of their lives. Whenever Layla finished sewing clothes for her neighbors, she would save a few coins, not for herself, but to surprise Amir with his favorite sweets, and Amir, after long hours at the repair shop, would bring home small things, a flower from the roadside, a warm loaf of bread, or sometimes just a story to make her laugh. They learned that gifts didn't need to come from shops. Sometimes the best gift was a comforting word after a hard day, or a shared silence that said, "I'm here with you." Months passed, and Layla's hair began to grow again. One evening, as the sun set over the rooftops, Amir took out the silver combs and handed them to her. "It's time," he said with a smile. Layla laughed, tears of joy in her eyes. "You kept them safe all this time?" "Always," Amir said softly, "because they remind me of how much love can cost and how much it gives back." She took the combs and slid them gently into her hair. Amir watched, amazed at how beautiful she looked, not because of the combs themselves, but because of what they meant: sacrifice, devotion, and faith in one another. That evening, as they sat together, watching the stars appear one by one, Layla whispered, "I think love is like those stars. Even when the night feels dark, it's always shining, if you know where to look." Amir nodded, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "And when two hearts love truly," he said, "even the smallest gift can light up the world." They sat in silence after that, hearts full, hands entwined, the leather watch strap and the silver combs resting beside them, glowing softly in the candlelight. In their little home, love had taught them its greatest lesson, that the value of a gift is never found in its price, but in the heart that gives it. Years passed, gently in the small town of Nur Abad. Seasons came and went, and with each turn of the calendar, Amir and Layla's love only deepened, quiet and steady, like the river that flowed behind their little home. Their life was never lavish, but it was full. The cracks in the walls were covered with laughter, the worn furniture softened by shared memories. They grew older together, hand in hand, learning that true happiness came not from what they owned, but from the moments they created side by side. On the shelf above their bed, still rested the wooden box, inside it, the silver combs and the leather watch strap. Dust had gathered around the edges, but the items themselves still shone, untouched by time. They had never been sold, never forgotten. They were the silent witnesses of a love that had survived sacrifice and grown stronger because of it. One evening, as a light rain fell outside, Layla sat by the window sewing a torn shawl. Amir, his hair now flecked with gray, was repairing a small clock that a neighbor had brought. The rhythmic sound of his tools mixed with the soft patter of rain, a melody of life, lived in harmony. Layla paused her sewing and looked up at the old box on the shelf. A smile touched her lips. "Do you ever think," she asked softly, "about that night, the night we gave each other those gifts?" Amir glanced up, smiling faintly. "I think about it every time I look at that box." He set down his tools and joined her by the window. "That night changed everything for us." Layla nodded. "It taught us what love really means." They sat quietly for a moment, watching the rain blur the lights outside. Then Amir said, "Do you remember how sad we felt when we realized our gifts couldn't be used?" Layla chuckled softly. "Yes, I thought I'd ruined your happiness. And I thought I'd lost something precious," Amir said. "But now, I realize, that night gave me the greatest gift I could ever have, knowing that I was loved beyond measure." Layla leaned her head on his shoulder. "And I felt the same. That's when I stopped wishing for a richer life. I realized I already had everything I could ever need." The rain continued to fall, gentle and cleansing. Years later, the story of Amir and Layla's anniversary sacrifice became something of a legend in Nur. Neighbors would tell it to their children about the young couple who gave up their most treasured possessions for each other, only to find that love itself was the most valuable gift of all. Even shopkeepers, when wrapping gifts during the winter festival, would smile and say, "May your gift be given with a heart like Amir and Layla's." One winter morning, long after their hair had turned silver, Amir opened the little box once more. He carefully lifted the leather strap and the silver combs, placing them on the table. "Layla," he said with a soft smile, "do you think it's time we shared these with someone else?" Layla looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" He nodded toward the window, where a young couple from the neighborhood was passing by. Newly married, faces full of hope, but pockets nearly empty. Layla understood. Her eyes softened. "You mean, let these gifts continue their story?" Amir nodded. "Yes, they've been ours long enough. Maybe it's time they remind someone else that love doesn't need riches, only a giving heart. Together, they wrapped the combs and strapped in a piece of soft cloth, tied it gently with a string, and wrote a small note that read, "To whoever receives this, may these simple gifts remind you that the truest love asks not what it can take, but what it can give." They left the package quietly at the young couple's doorstep and returned home hand in hand. That night, as they sat by the window once more, Layla whispered, "Now our gifts are where they belong." Still giving, Amir smiled and kissed her forehead. "Yes," he said softly, "that's the beauty of love. It never ends, it just keeps finding new hearts." The years finally carried them away, as time does with all stories. But the memory of Amir and Layla lived on, retold again and again, by those who believed in the power of love over wealth. And somewhere in Nurabad, perhaps still kept safely in a little wooden box, rested the silver combs and the leather watch strap, timeless symbols of a truth the world too often forgets, that the greatest gifts are not bought or wrapped, but born from the heart that loves enough to give.